Konnichiwa. Welcome to the Martial Maze. I'm with my partner in crime, Barakulat Shidoshi.
And I'm with my partner in crime, Israel Lopez.
Yo. I mean, this is the second episode of season 4, and we already got a special guest up in his house today.
Yes.
I'm being really ridiculous right now. It's already started. Author Insight 101. He was the 2023 Maze Award Martial Scientist of the Year.
Yes.
We're talking about none other than Raising the Bar, UNA, Randy Haskins Sensei. You know what I'm saying? The Underground Alliance.
Did he do it again?
Yeah, I really did too.
He did it again.
UA way, Randy Haskins Sensei. Wow, y'all ain't gonna let me get away with that at all, right? Look, he's looking at me like I'm about to sidekick it. Underground Alliance, Martial Science Research Association. Yes, Randy Haskins Sensei. Konnichiwa.
Welcome, brother.
Like, you know they say when most animals bare their teeth right before they strike, right?
Yes.
I don't even think he's smiling at me at this point. It looks like a smile, but it's not. He's like, I'm going to kick the hell out of him. And no, I rehearsed that in my head 3 times, and I still,
failed mission.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister for this guy.
Well, I end up. It's like saying Cijo. Like I can't just say. I can't say
Mutaka
just
Kabir?
Yeah, I can't say that. I have to say Cijo Abdul Muhammad Kabir. I can't just say one part of the name. I have to say the whole thing. I feel like it's the same thing. I always butcher it when in my head I hear UA, but I end up saying U and A, which is wrong. Or I just save myself and say Underground Alliance.
I just want to understand, why does he add the and in there? I'm trying to make that connection.
Trying to figure that
U
out.
and A.
Yes.
I'm
UA.
like,
I think it's an English thing. It's a grammar thing for me. I'm just, Hey, no one's perfect, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I try to be.
True indeed.
You know what I'm saying? I suck. Second episode already screwing up. But yeah, we have a special guest here today. So we're going to start off before we get into our Q&A, because this kind of came up. It was a reel that was passed around. And I know some of us in Western Mass, we saw it. I saw it. I know Haskins Sensei saw it.
I didn't.
I know, yes. But it was Michael Jai White, and he was asked a question by an interviewer about what was the best martial art for a street fight.
Okay.
And I thought about that for our first episode of the season 4 was when we talked about which guy would be better, this, and the third. And he starts naming off all these different martial systems. And then when he got to karate, it kind of bothered me a little bit, because I inferred that the way he was saying karate was like point fighting and stuff. He makes a point fighting reference. You actually got to watch that segment. It actually comes from a longer segment, but that segment got cut as a reel. And I told you hit the comments, and I don't necessarily agree with what he was saying, and that's actually why. So Haskins Sensei and myself, we had a conversation about it, and I think we're both like-minded about it. But I'm gonna let Haskins jump in about a second and start us off with it. But this is where this part comes from, real quick in the beginning. We're starting off in a session, but I want to make 2 things clear before we actually get into it. First and foremost, I do know typically in the African-American community, there's a thing called black on black hate, and folks throw out haterade on another individual, African-American individual who's doing well, you know what I'm saying? And so we want to make that clear. This is not the case. This is not that kind of thing. And if that's someone's mindset, I'm sorry that they feel that way. No, this is what we should be doing as martial artists. You know what I'm saying? Critiquing, getting together. It's the only profession where, like any other, scientists all get together, they palather, and they have different discussions. Any other profession, they do this in the
symposium.
Sometimes in the martial community, we tend to not do this, or when it's done, it's always done, and it always seems to be put in a negative context. That's that's trigger word, context, because that's where we're going to go with it. So, Haskins Sensei, how are you doing, sir? How fair are you?
I'm well.
So you want to talk to us a little bit about that a little bit?
Well, yeah. This is not about any individual. It just happened that DJ Vlad asked White Sensei the question. But this is a question that's floating around the martial landscape since the beginning of time.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
So, again, this is not to discredit all the stuff that White Sensei has achieved or anything like that. He was just the person that happened to be asked it, and we all saw it, so that sparked this discussion. So it's more about the discussion, the subject, not about White Sensei.
Yes, I like the well said. Well said. Then it's kind of because we're going to get into that articulation and stuff like that because that's important because it takes it into context so that you have a better understanding.
So what was the question asked?
So again, it was general. What style is best? Vlad asked him. He said, "How many styles do you? How many fighting styles do you do?" So White Sensei let him know he has 8 black belts. And then Vlad said, "Well, which one's best for street fighting?" And White Sensei had said, "Well, some things that I do are not fighting systems, like wushu and all this other stuff." You know, he mentioned Tai Chi, and he said, although there are fighting components or self-defense components of it, it's not fighting styles. He said, so well, how many fighting styles do you actually do? He said, okay, so we'll say 6. Out of the 8 black belts, 6 of the systems he could use for fighting. He said, but the best street fighting systems are boxing. This is White Sensei's words. Boxing. He said wrestling, and he said Muay Thai, and he said MMA. Because MMA is considered a style of martial arts this day and age. Which really, that's where my problem came in, was the fact that any martial artist asked that question should never answer that question like that. That's equivalent to saying, well, what tools are best to fix an automobile? Snap-on, Craftsman, Harbor Freight. Because all he did is name a collection of tools. Mm-hmm. Karate is a collection of tools.
Yeah.
You know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a collection of tools, or wrestling, a collection of tools. You can have a full toolbox, but never learn how to fix a car.
Right.
So you're just walking around with tools, but they're useless to you when it comes to fixing cars because you don't know. So it's not the tool, it's the context in which you collect those tools in. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is, if I collect a collection of tools, but I study birdhouse making, it really doesn't lend to fixing cars. If I collect karate tools or techniques in a self-defense, self-protection context, they're going to lend to that because context will mold the concept.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, like I said, go ahead, Barack.
No. You also have people that are collectors. All right. And look at what I have. All right. I know so many people that because they have the fortune, mm-hmm. I've been to their homes and they just buy stuff just to have it. All right. And same thing in the martial arts. I see people just doing things or training under instructors just to say they were there.
Indeed.
and I see that all the time. Why did you choose that school or that gym? Well, did you see the name? Mm-hmm. That name. And that's good enough for me. Mm-hmm. Now, me as a martial artist, I'm like, but that's the age we're living in now.
Indeed. My question is, though, with that being said, or my statement, I should say, is that really doesn't address the subject. The subject, there are collectors, yes. But if we're talking about what system is best, what style is best for self-protection or for the street, right? We're talking about, now it doesn't matter if I'm
going to jump in real quick. I do like the analogy, the framing analogy. I feel like there are a lot of folks that will really get what you're saying when you break it into that, mm-hmm. the example. So if you could do that real quick, that'd be neat.
Here's the thing, right? So the point I was just making, which leads into that, is if if you collect karate tools, karate techniques, or whatever system it is, right, that you represent.
Because he has 8 black belts. I just had to put that there. So he's a collector.
But again, this is not about Michael Jai White, so this is about the subject that he was discussing. But if I collect karate tools, and the context in which I study these things, the use of these things is strictly pragmatic or to address self-protection and self-defense. You can't say one without the other, right?
Yes.
Then even if I don't have the heart to actually use it, I still know it in that context. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's designed for that strictly. So what do I mean by that? All right, let's take a technique in karate, right? We call it a side ride. In judo, it's called a knee ride. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's called, or excuse me, not a knee ride. In judo, it's called a side 4/4 hold.
Yes.
And in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's called side mount or side control.
Side control.
Right? Okay.
Right.
So, context. If we apply it in a sporting context, you're taught to, when you're on bottom, right, of somebody's side control, you're taught to put frames in, right, shrimp your butt away to get space to put your knee in and ultimately get your butterflies in. Right?
Yeah.
That's a sporting context. Create frames, get distance to recover guard. Right?
Right. There's no striking involved or any of that other stuff.
Exactly. Now, in a pragmatic context, it changes the concept. You no longer want to create space with frames. You want to hold the person to you, so they have to fight to create the space to get the distance to hit you. And in the process of them trying to fight to create that space, or that chaos of them trying to create the space, you explode out.
Get your frames
And
get your butterfly, get
recover,
your underhooks,
or kick them off, or whatever
yes.
it is. You understand? So the context, self-protection context, changed the concepts that we employ.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So if I train strictly in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for self-protection, I'm automatically going to know it. I get underneath someone somehow in the street, which happens, and then I pin him to me, pin my ear to his bicep, grab his tricep, grab his neck, keep a nice clinch, right? And shore up that space where he can't mount me and this and that. Now he's trying to create this space, and I explode out. I technical stand up, recover my footing, and
You're back to your feet.
back to my feet. That's what I know. That's what I do. That's what I will resort to automatically. So the problem is people study systems or train in these different styles in a sporting context, and the person teaching them tries to pass it off or tries to convince them that it applies to real life street, but it actually doesn't. That's the issue.
Yes.
Not making the distinction between the two, or understanding the distinction between the two. That's where the problem comes in. If I collect tools and I study to be a mechanic, I am a mechanic. Even if I'm too scared to walk to the car to fix it, I'm still a mechanic.
Yeah, you understand the tools.
I understand how to use these tools for that purpose.
For that purpose.
So when White Sensei was talking about it and he said, well, karate, no, and this and that, he's thinking like most people train in karate instead of context and application and this and that. No martial artist should, in my opinion, ever answer that question. It should be more about, well, what context are they training?
That's
it should elicit more
So yeah, my answer
discussion
would
and
have been
questions.
in what context? That like what we're talking about. What's better for a street fight? Well, it depends on where you're going to, how you train. If I'm training for street fighting, I'm good. Any art.
Exactly. That's the thing. There's no such thing as a better art for this. No, it's just the context in which you train in. Any art works if you train for that context.
For that thing, yes.
Period. That's all he had to say. It would have been a short conversation if I was sitting in that chair.
Well, no, I feel like you would have started explaining tools and everything.
Oh, I would have broke it down to the point where he would be like, you know what, we need another couple hours.
Some people but people bring that up because, I mean, they're curious. I mean, here you have a gentleman who has been training martial arts for quite some time. He holds a number of different ranks, in different systems. So who better to ask? All right. And so it's really, there is no gray area. It's literally black and white, and they just want a simple answer. All right, because everyone kind of cross trains nowadays. So the question is, okay, what should I be studying right now to be able to handle myself in the street?
So it's lack of understanding the context,
Right.
is why you get a guy who says, well, now I'm going to train in Muay Thai because I trained in judo for X amount of years and I don't understand how to defend against somebody striking or kicking. But, well, yeah, of course you didn't, because in the sport of judo, you're never being struck or kicked at. But if you trained with the mindset of being able to defend against, close the distance against somebody who can strike and kick, get it and utilize the tools that you have, which is what we major in. We major in throwing. We minor in everything else, because there's definitely a Timiwaza in judo if you learned it as a martial art. I'm just speaking for myself and my experience and the way and my approach to that. I would tell you that no, if we're, again, that's what Haskins Sensei and myself were discussing, that no, you don't really need anything else. Now you wanting to go study another thing, that's great. But if we're talking about learning this with the mindset of being able to handle my business out in the real world.
I expected well, I didn't listen to it. I would expect a more intelligent answer to that.
That's my point.
That I would expect that, being someone who is highly seasoned like that.
That's exactly my point.
On top of that too,
thrown the question.
All right, but also on top of that
irrelevant.
too, I kind of look at it as marketing, just great marketing. I mean, like, what are the best things out there to be studying?
But again, it was a bad representation, in my opinion. It was a bad representation of his knowledge of the subject.
Fighting.
You can't represent yourself as in my opinion, again, you cannot represent yourself as a professional on the subject or
Top tier.
a master of
Or
the
an expert,
subject,
yes.
giving an expert on the subject, giving answers like that. That was the most ridiculous answer I've ever heard in my life. And that's a common answer. I was like, why would he even entertain that question in such a way and answer it like that, where he's actually naming systems? And you understand? It has not, I don't care what, if you study tennis, but you study it in a self-protection context,
self-defense mindset. Yeah,
you'll learn how to beat the shit out of somebody with a tennis racket.
Listen, I caught my backhand to Serena Williams.
Listen,
I even make the noise when I hit you.
It doesn't matter what you study. It matters the context in which you study it in. So you should never mention anything about, well, boxing and that's
yeah. I think. I would say So I once got asked, somebody asked me once, what would be a better art for me to study if I wanted to get into martial arts? And this was an older person. And I found myself saying to them, well, because of where you're worried about wear and tear on your body, blah, 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 all this other good stuff. I said, my own opinion, I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he says, why? And I got into the reasons why. And he said, well, because it's coming from a judoka, the hard falls, this, that, and the third, the boom, the wear and tear on your body. Hold on, just let me finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I said, but for me, again, I was prefacing myself, and I was saying, but for me, I like the easy peasy rolling. And I was saying, you can level your own intensity, and I think I said this last week, but for this individual and what we were talking about, it would have made sense. I said, well, you're that or Tai Chi and stuff like that. Now, if we were talking about fighting or the concepts of fighting, then I said, and I think I responded to that individual the very same way. I said, well, you can almost train that anywhere. But if you're talking about just getting into something that's going to give you all of those benefits, you just got to know what you can pick out, what can work in sport, what works in real life, that no two gyms are created equally. But this might be better, a good start for you if you want to get into it.
Let's discuss that about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. All right. Have you noticed some of the high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu people? Bodies are destroyed.
Well, that's contest.
That
the knees blowing it out
true.
for the.
That's
Wait,
true.
okay, go ahead.
Listen,
Go ahead.
listen. All right, Hickson Gracie, bodies destroyed, bad back, all this. Besides the Parkinson's he got right now, but right there's another guy, I can't remember his name. Long hair, real big dude. His body is destroyed from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I know a lot of people who are personally around me with bad backs, bad this, bad that, bad this from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So
now, is that sport? Is that because of the way their intensity in sport? Because I do watch some of those guys go spastic on each other.
whatever it is, it's a common thing in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu circle.
Because I was going to make that statement about judoka. Typically, most sport judoka, guys that are hardcore in the sport, have like just that: bad knees, hurt back, rotator cuff issues for days. Broke almost every finger, broken toes, ankle issues.
Well, that's because of competition.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Contest guys, guys who were the hardcore with contests. But then the most of the grassroots older players I know, no, they're still bopping around like.
The full spectrum of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, new, old, bodies are destroyed. I tell people all the time, and I'm around a lot of Brazilian
Yeah, I'm about to say, you're around it
people.
a whole lot more than I am. So.
I tell people all the time, listen, martial arts is designed to heal the body, not hurt the body.
That is true.
Whatever you're doing that's destroying your body, you need to stop. Right?
Yes.
So, back in the days when I was training up, and I trained since I was 6 years old, back in the days when I was training up, I noticed things about people around me. And I said, something's wrong. So I wrote a curriculum. The first book I wrote was the curriculum, right, for my school, right? And it was 2 books at one time. It was a beginner book and then an intermediate and advanced book. There was 2 books. Then I combined them. But I studied a lot of stuff about the body and this and that. My brother was a nursing student, so I took all his medical books and I read those and all types of stuff. Anyway, I created a curriculum that would benefit my students' bodies as opposed to destroying it like everybody around me. Everybody around me has had several operations, okay, on necks and backs and hips and this and that. At my age, their bodies was destroyed. I am at the age that they were when their bodies were destroyed. They're probably younger than me, and I have no ailments to speak of. My body, and even in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu circles, I tell them, listen, you might want to rethink that because I'm the oldest person in my dojo with the exception of a new kid that just signed up, and I have no problems whatsoever because of the way that I approach my art.
Well, yeah, I was going to say your personal, think,
16th century Japan, Gichin Funakoshi and people like that were sickly children who got into the martial arts and became stronger men.
Yes.
Flash forward to the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and people were destroying their bodies from their art. What changed? You see what I'm saying? What changed? Everybody
Contest.
I know.
I would tell you that would. I understand that they did contests back then, but it wasn't the same. The contest back then and stuff like that. But I would tell you.
What makes you think
contest.
they weren't the same? They were a lot rougher back then.
Well, I'm about to say. I mean, that was the whole thing. Death matches back then.
They were a lot rougher, even when it wasn't death matches. Well, when it left Okinawa,
I would tell you. I would say to you that when you put in certain kinds of rule sets and things like that, dictate how you attack, and it changes. It changes everything. It changes how your approach to something. Where, case in point, I use judo. Maximum efficiency of movement, right? That's one of the maxims. Ever watch a contest?
Well, this is where I'm going to chime in. The difference is, like you said, when you're training in hard training, all right, you're supposed to be taking care of yourself. The sensei was also the doctor, all right, and knew how to heal you when you were doing hard body conditioning and all that. The problem is that you have folks out here who are doing this kind of training with no medical or no medical experience whatsoever and understanding on how to heal your body. So, for instance, if we do hard training, are you using medicinal wine after? Or are you actually doing acupuncture, acupressure, massage? Are you really taking
Stretching
cupping? Are you doing all of that? Because this is what the old men were doing. They, as hard as they were training, they were also taking care of themselves. Also, too, back in those days, they were very conscious of ki. All right? Nowadays, when's the last time you meditated? When's the last time you do any of those
I was going to
things?
say the other day, I actually broke that out the wheel. I broke that out. I always did that for training because we're talking off air about that. I ride hot when I start training for contests, so I need something that balances me out.
Right,
So
you
actually,
need
I started playing music again and stuff like that because that was one of the things that's balanced me out, balances the equation and stuff. Because I really do. It's my, like, there are not other people that do it this way. For me, I just start running hot. I'm quick to anger, this, that, and the third. And so I always had something else to kind of balance the equation. It was a combination of meditation and playing music.
Right. Most folks don't do muso or any of those things.
But besides the fact that if we go back into training itself, most people, right, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, the training focus shifted, right? So now the recent martial landscape, 40s, 50s, 60s, and on, became more about learning how to do something that somebody specified, meaning like this. Well, we do our art like this, so you kick like this. And a lot of times, from lack of understanding of the body and this and that, they were executing techniques in detrimental ways for the body, right? If we go back in the beginning, training, when it was called China Hand and all this other stuff, wasn't about learning a style more so than it was using that style as a vehicle to understand how to develop body intelligence or dexterity. You understand?
Yeah.
So you weren't limited to a way of doing something. You just learned how to maximize how to do whatever with your body. Hence the term kung fu, great skill. That's what it means. It doesn't mean a style. It just says great skill. And people who were kung fu masters had unbelievable dexterity.
Yeah.
Meaning this. You remember the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You remember when he was sitting there writing two scripts with both hands?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he was writing two separate things with both hands. He understood how to use his body. That's all it was. It was a demonstration of that.
Yep.
But now everybody's so focused on, well, I do this style of this, so we kick like this. Okay, do this. But it's an unnatural way of kicking. Next thing you know, their hip is out of place, and that's the problem. We need to get back to using that art as a vehicle to understanding how to use us in an unrestricted manner as opposed to learning a style.
Right.
Hello, this is Israel Lopez Sensei of the Martial Maze. If you are a fan of the podcast or our YouTube channel, The Martial Maze Presents Modern Combatives, you can help support future episodes on both platforms by becoming a member of our Patreon. Membership entitles individuals to exclusive content not shared on either platform, as well as limited edition, exclusive only to Patreon merchandise. There are 3 different tiers to choose from: bronze, silver, gold. Gold, of course, being the very best. But no matter what level of supporter, to show our appreciation and to celebrate our 4th season of the Martial Maze podcast, we are awarding once a month one lucky supporter free Martial Maze merchandise. A winner will be chosen at random at the first of every month. This will go on until the end of 2024. This is our way of saying thank you for supporting us at the Marshall Maze over the years. But please keep in mind, you can't win if you're not a supporter. So you definitely want to be a supporter. That's the Marshall Maze at Patreon. We hope that you become a supporter. And once again, thank you for listening.
Well, yeah, I mean, once you start going down that path, it really gets in the way of the money. What are you doing?
And that's the problem. So once it became a business, that's when people started separating stuff. Because if you're giving somebody something that everybody else is giving them, it's no longer a moneymaker. So what they're doing, like, let's break down karate. Karate's original curriculum consisted of everything, meaning it was the first form, and I throw up the quotes, of mixed martial arts, right? So karate was, the first phase was punching, thrusting, striking, kicking, this, right? And then Tagumi, Okinawan grappling / wrestling, right? And then loading, tripping, reaping, and sweeping. Hence the 9 basic throws of karate curriculum. And then it went into joint manipulation, pressure point application, muscle and tendon disruption, vital area attacks. Then it went into kabuto. You didn't do karate without learning sai and all these other little things, right? Tonfa and things like that, right? Kama and all those things, right? So what it became, though, people were like, all right, so that's the karate curriculum in its entirety. But now if you look at karate, it's mainly punching, blocking, and kicking, right? And notice how I said karate's original curriculum was punching, thrusting, striking, kicking. But everybody does punch, block, kick karate mainly, right? And then if we take out the third phase of karate training, right? Remember I said it's loading, tripping, reaping, and sweeping. What do you call that?
We call it judo.
Judo, right? So judo is 100% judo. In karate curriculum, it's 20% of karate. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So people were saying, all right, if I isolate this, all right, so we're doing this, okay, I can make money because not everybody does this. You see what I'm saying? That's the problem. If everybody did everything, nobody would make money. Even though there's enough money to go around, with 8 billion people in the world, people don't think in those terms, so they made it more of a business thing.
Well, also, it's an American thing. Because
Well,
it's
no, it's not
different
just
from
in America, it's everywhere.
no. I know it's everywhere.
Capitalism, I guess.
But
to
what
a
I'm
degree.
what I'm saying is that here in America, like I said, the state of schools. I mean, it becomes a niche.
Well,
is what I'm
it's the
saying.
one
If
thing-
you want that specific kind of training, that's not a popular brand. So a lot of folks that are wanting to get into martial arts today, of course they're going to go with MMA. Of course they're going to go to BJJ.
Well, I mean, because
like
again,
even now
we've had conversations about
right,
that. Why
even
some of the
now,
perks.
BJJ, and it's so crazy when I hear folks who are BJJ students, and they say these quotes back like it's like this. It's so wise of what they're saying. They're like they're repeating these quotes.
Bring your mic.
Oh, they're repeating these quotes, right? That comes from our traditional schools, but the person, the BJJ instructor, is not making that clear to their students, and they're thinking that it derives from BJJ. All right, and like you hear these quotes, I'm like, no, we were saying that back in the day. That originated from karate. That originated from jujitsu. You know what I'm saying? But Japanese jiu-jitsu.
I'm more concerned that a lot of times that they don't know what the quotes mean.
No, they don't, but it sounds cool, so they regurgitate it. All right? And right now, when you look at these schools, they're not focusing on ki. They're not focusing on healing the body. They're focusing on winning tournaments.
Oh yeah, we're
And
fighting.
so
well, I mean, because
and-
again, that's a whole another aspect of the martial system, the meditation, the spiritual side. A lot of folks, they don't got time for that. It's like the Burger King, have it your way.
Right, but that's what Haskins Sensei is talking about, and that's why we're all damaged and bruised up and beat up and ran down because we're not doing any self-help. We're not taking care of ourselves because the martial arts is supposed to heal, but we're doing the absolute reverse.
That's true. Well, that goes the first half of the segment, and I think we'll touch base on it. And if you're missing what we came away with, it's what we should be coming away with in the end. It's context. Context. 5 million ways to Sunday. That's the correct answer for a question when somebody asks what style is the best martial arts system. That you should, if you're a real high-end martial artist or really up there, one, you wouldn't entertain answering it. But just in case you did, because you're a nice person and stuff like that, we encourage being nice people, right? We're trying to all be better. It's just context.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what do you have for us today? Where are we with questions, man? We're going
Boy,
Q&A. We got a special guest right here. You know.
I don't know. All right.
Right.
So the first question I'm going to ask, this was something that was brought up to me. Dealing with having a student that has mobility issues, have probably a rod in their ankle, damaged knee, they can't bend as often, and you have a curriculum where there are certain techniques you have to do. So now, how do you begin to rank? Do you extract these techniques out of the syllabus for that specific student because they cannot perform them? How do you grade them if they can't complete a certain portion of that syllabus? Or do you send them elsewhere?
All right. So, I have this answer two different ways. All right. So, the first way I'll answer it is it's not meant for you. It's not meant for everybody. There are certain things that you need walking in. Depending, again, like the earlier first half hour of a segment, it's context, right?
Right.
If it's about self-protection, self-defense, then we could do something with you. But if I'm teaching you the sport of judo, well, the sport of judo requires you to there are certain things you have to be able to do. You know what I'm saying? And stuff like that. Through Kemi, you have to be able to roll. You have to be able to do a cartwheel at some point. You know, you like all these things. And if you physically can't do those things, not saying that we couldn't teach you judo, you know, that you're less likely. This is not really going to be a good fit for you. That would be how I would answer that. But if I'm teaching you, that's why I said I can answer this two ways. If I'm looking at it from the self-protection, self-defense, well, yeah, so why certainly. I can give you things that will help you live your life. You know, first thing, live your life in such a way where violence misses you. As I'm
right, but this
winking and
person is
pointing.
interested in getting in the arts. He's not interested in the self-defense aspect. I want to learn that system. So it's a no-go?
I would say,
do you cater?
if the information, like if not so much as the information, if I'm trying to think of a good way of explaining this. It's like building a foundation on a house, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have the load-bearing walls done right, your house will fall apart, man. Or if your foundation's weak at some point, it may fall apart. You know what I'm saying? Or fall down, but blown away, right? And depending on that person's limited mobility, it really would depend on whether or not they can hit that bare minimum. If they can't hit that bare minimum, that structure that they're going to need, because everything's going to build upon that. You know what I'm saying? Then, and again,
let me
talking
say
about martial
this.
arts. It wasn't meant for everybody.
Let me say this, right? Last week we talked about hitting the wall. All right. So let's just say you have a student, and this is just another example. Not everybody's going to get a black belt. It kills me when everyone thinks they can make black belts. Some people, the reality is that back in the day, not everyone got one. It was only people who can complete, and really follow through with it and dedicate themselves. And that's the reality. But right now, because of business, we want to make sure everyone gets a black belt. Little kids too. All right. But what I'm saying is it's hitting the wall where, let's just say you get to green belt. But that one technique you cannot do for the life of you. You cannot do it. It's just not going to, you hit the wall. So what happens there?
Well, no. Then it goes back to what is that technique? Because that technique is really just a template, right? So we're looking at it like that as the template for a principle. You can still utilize that principle or that concept another way. You know what I'm saying? Because you're only limited by your imagination once you understand that.
So you're shaping it to the
like
student.
Yeah, well, yeah, you fit the art to the student, never the student to the art. However, there's still a basic bare minimum. There's just certain things you need to be able to do physically. You know what I'm saying? It's what I believe anyway, especially with the art that I teach and stuff. Even in Cine, remember back in the day, there was a guy, the Clam, he was blind and stuff like that. He trained with Haskins Sensei for a handful of years.
Did you say the Clam?
The Clam, that's what everybody called him. I don't know what his real name was. I hope
sorry to interrupt.
Insulting.
I'm sorry.
No, you caught it because I heard it.
Clam.
But
I never knew his real name. I'm like, all I knew was he was blind.
Okay.
And he was blind and he earned a black belt. But the guy could fight. If he got in closing distance and can lay a hand on you, you were his. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. But yeah. So It was weird because he was a blind dude.
Yeah, but
you know what I'm saying.
yeah.
But he really could. But he understood the assignments. He
Right.
understood. He could close if he, like I said, if he knew where you were, in proximity to you. I don't know. I'm not gonna say it was Daredevil. I'm gonna say, but he'd get you. He'd hit you with that Shinzigari, he'd shut you down, and then go from there.
Yeah,
and he'd
other
work
senses
from there.
become
Yeah.
heightened.
And stuff.
Yes.
But if he grabbed you and made contact and initiated the grapple, you weren't getting away.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And stuff like that. I just knew that he was blind, and everybody called him the Clam.
Okay.
It's so horrible. I don't know that man's name.
What saith you, Haskins Sensei?
It goes back to context, definitely.
He scoped you out. He loves what you do, and he wants to be under your tutelage.
Well, again, it goes back to context. If you're going for aesthetics, and I throw up the quotes when I say this word, tradition, and passing down the template itself, might be a problem. But if you're going for, as Lopez Sensei said, the concept and the theory, is just supported by way of the physical example. And the physical example or physicalness is just an example of how to achieve, or that instructor achieves that particular concept. And it could be, once you understand the concept, you can adjust your physicalness to achieve that same concept. It's just when people are stuck with the example given without understanding the concept where it becomes a problem. Mm-hmm. So if I taught somebody something who really couldn't, like their ankles fused and they really couldn't do whatever,
Certain modifications you may be able to make, or
the way that I tell my students, and this subject came up recently, as a matter of fact, I tell my students, listen, one of my students, his name is Phil. He's about to get both hips replaced. When he came to me years ago, he just had his leg from knee down ripped off, and they ended up, a tendon held on, so they reattached it. But they told him he'll never play basketball again and all this other stuff. Phenomenal basketball player and all this other stuff. And when he came to me, I told him, listen, don't listen to the doctors. I said, I got you. And I trained him, and he kicks better with his bad leg than he does with his good leg. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because he understands the concepts that I employed, So he's not limited physically. If I just taught him a technique, he'd be limited to that technique. But I used techniques to get across certain concepts, and he just adjusts his physicalness to those concepts. You know what I'm saying? To achieve those concepts. And so he's not limited by any means.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what's important in my assessment and my school as well. I'm not.
So if a person cannot do a technique, like let's just say one technique. If a person cannot complete one technique from an injury, it's a no-go. You can't join my school.
No, I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't say that either.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm made of titanium, man, and that was one of the first things I was
So,
worried about.
all right, so it's really based on what you can and what you cannot do, because it's interesting as instructors. We're all instructors here, and so I like to have I like little mental exercises because I meet all different walks of life. And so I get folks coming through all different sizes, big, small, skinny, all of that. And because we're older, because I only work with adults, we all bring some baggage with us. All right, a lot of us that are older is just because you just haven't worked out in a long time. Mm-hmm. All right, so I can understand you can't squat. and you can't do certain things, but we're going to get you there.
What was that called back in the day? We call it conditioning now, but there was actually a name for it. No, not tight sabaki.
No, Taiso, that's what I call it.
Yeah, Taiso body warm. But there was a way, even in old school Okinawa they there was stuff that you conditioned originally, so it was separated. It was because you say it sometimes too, the function. And one thing is to teach the principle. The other thing is to get you prepared to learn this and stuff like that. So that you were really just exercising the muscles so that they can do this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I forgot what that's called. So.
Right, that's a good point, but that's what my Taiso usually is. It's to get your body prepared. We're not just doing useless movement.
I guess, so circling back real quick, don't mean to cut you off,
Yeah.
but like it'd be like me trying to teach somebody in a wheelchair how to do Ippon Seminagi.
Is this wrong? Because we see dojos doing this, and
No,
this is
but
ethics and all that, and you want to question because you have a business.
I
I see
can't
black
begin to get
belts
in,
with no arms and no legs. I'm
that's
just saying.
what I'm saying.
I
If
agree with you
if I think about
1,000%.
the mechanic, right, everything I need to be able to do to throw somebody on Seminagi, right, which way am I do? How I got to break the kazushi, how I got to get the kazushi, right, and then how I'm going to be bringing their body forward and over me, right? I got to break it, that plane, if they have the head coming before the hips. Well, and I'm thinking to myself, well, how do I teach that to somebody who has a wheelchair, right? If the person's in a wheelchair, where the wheels aren't locked, so it's not making a sturdy base, right?
Listen, I agree 1,000%. One of the most important visual representations we've ever had was the movie 300. When the Hunchback was on the mountain with Leonidas.
Yes.
Okay, and he goes, "Great king, I'd love to join your ranks," or whatever he said.
Yeah.
I paraphrase, of course. And he goes, "Well, lift your shield." And he can't lift it. And he goes, "Your father should have told you. The weakest part of the phalanx is this and that," whatever he said. And then the Hunchback got mad and said, "Father, you lied," and threw his shield down and his sword down and all that other stuff. Listen, not everybody is built for something. The Japanese had it perfect. When the caste system itself is perfect. Some people are farmers, some people are warriors, some people are this, some people are that. I know for a fact I could never be a doctor in the operating room. That's not my thing.
Don't fool yourself.
No. He's saying he could learn all this stuff.
I
to be a
can do
doctor.
it.
Yeah, you can learn
but
it.
that's not my thing. That's not my calling.
Okay.
That's not what I would want to do.
But you have people the other way too, where they just, they kind of, you stay in your lane.
What I'm saying is this. I was in, as an example, when I worked for the prison, I brought an inmate to get the inmate was getting an operation. Laying on the table, they cut him open, they pulled stuff out of his body like this, pulled it out of his body, laid this on his thigh, and was talking, leaned on the body like he was working on a car. And I'm sitting there looking at this like, what the hell? I was like, this is insane. It's one of the most insane. I was like, I would never want to do that. That's just not my thing. Again, everybody has a station in life.
But we're martial
You
artists.
understand?
We know the human body.
Yes, I know it, and I
that's
don't mind.
fine.
I don't
Most
mind
of us become
destroying it.
doctors.
That's
I
kinda
don't mind
crazy.
destroying it, but
We got to know how to heal it.
I don't want to dig in it and pull shit out.
yeah,
It
that's,
was the weirdest thing. And then he's sitting there talking to this nurse, and he's sitting there, and he was probably making a date. I don't know what was going on. He's leaning on the bodies like he's leaning on a Buick, and he's pointing at stuff, and then he was gonna go to lunch. I was like, oh hell no.
This is too normal.
Yeah, it was the strangest thing ever. So what I'm saying is this: not everybody's made for something. There, like you mentioned, there's a guy with a black belt doing a kata. He got no arms, he got no legs. Dude, somebody comes to my dojo, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate mail for this. But listen, this is not your thing. You can't. No, you can't. You're actually not.
Well,
that's
that's what I was circling back to.
I think
so
without
to answer that question, it would be, look, this isn't meant for everybody.
Right.
It's
I
just
say
not a
the same
one size
thing.
fits all kind of thing. So, Yes, we can always go round robin and circle the wagons 5 million ways a Sunday. The concepts and principles could be a one size fits all. However, go ahead. You were about to interject something.
It's physically one side, like you said, no arms, no legs. You're not made for this.
You're not made for it.
You can't do it. And then there's people who are not mentally built for this.
Yes.
Hence why I have such a process of weeding people out. I'm like,
it's like learning how to use a firearm.
Right.
Everybody can learn how to use one, but I would tell you personally, if you don't plan on taking a life, don't ever get one.
Right.
Because you're gonna hesitate.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You really are. You're gonna hesitate.
Yeah, but most people keep it on them just hopefully.
Yeah, better have it. Yeah.
Hey, if I show it, hopefully it prevents
even if
something.
I close my eyes and I shoot 3 times, right? I'm like, because that always works.
So it's also based on what maladies, whatever you may possibly be dealing with, whether you're blind, whether I can't hear. Okay, so I mean, there's certain things you can see. There's certain senses, and so if you lack those senses, there's certain we can navigate around that.
Well, I can send you. The great thing about doing what we do is we know a lot of folks in the martial universe. And what I like is, I'll get somebody that won't work at my school, but might be a better fit at Haskins Sensei's school. Hey, listen, I'm gonna hit my friend up. I'm gonna tell him you might be coming through.
Yeah,
and go.
Yeah, that's what I do all the time. I refer people
like,
to other instructors.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Refer it out. Like any other doctor, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna refer you out. I can't help you,
yeah.
but I think martial arts will help you in a whole. But I don't teach all of that, so I'm gonna send you to somebody that does. You know what I'm saying? It's like working on a car, right?
A lot of folks
I'm not an Audi dealer.
A lot of folks don't do that. Integrity is something, and a lot of folks don't do that.
That's
sad.
Yeah.
No, they keep it to themselves. If I can't have you, no one can. All right, I'm not even going to refer you. I had certain parents who brought their youth here because I do work with youth, but they have to be teenagers, like 17, 15, 17 or so. And so, there was this one kid who was autistic, and he was on, definitely in the spectrum, the spectrum. And, I gave him a trial class. I could see that he had spirit and he had heart, and he really wanted to learn. But I, as an instructor, I don't have the education.
Yeah, you're not equipped to deal with it.
And so that's another thing too. You have instructors that will take anybody because it's a payday. You know what I'm saying? And for me, we start off with, loyalty, respect, honesty, all of those different things I look at. And so for me, I know where my standards lie. I know what I can handle and what I can't handle. And so he did a great class, but I knew I could not continue this. So I referred him.
Yeah.
And because he was with, he was first with Griffins first. And the parent took him out for whatever reason. And she seen what I was doing. She was like, I want him to learn that. All right. And so I said, come over this way. And then I had a talk with the parent. I said, you know what? Because your child is on a spectrum, I'm not capable of dealing with this. I didn't go to school for this. I don't have any degree in this. All right, so I stay in my lane, okay? So I said, someone who's really good? And I mentioned that person, and I said, bring him to that dojo. And because he works with kids that are just
I was
like
about to say
yours.
there's a school in California, the judo school they work. I want to head out that way and actually take they host this like seminar to kind of bring you into how do you deal with kids with special needs, this, that, and the third. And I was interested because the guy's, I guess he's amazing at it and stuff like that, dealing with special needs.
And I've seen great results.
But
I stay in my lane.
I'm of the mind that martial arts, like we said earlier at the earlier half of the segment, it was to make people better than where you were. So I'm like, martial arts. I'm like, hey man, I got this. Martial arts will fix it. This is my own infomercial. Be like, ooh, did you just get a spot on your car? Well, if you dial 1-855-43, you can study martial arts. And with martial arts, you'll learn to fix that spot.
Well, back in the day, it was everything, B.
That was the ones,
martial arts was like cocaine. You need something, pour cocaine on it. Yo, Robitussin. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? It fixes everything.
He's taking the hummus, putting it on everything.
You know what I'm saying? You got to cold sniff some cocaine.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? Yo, now back in the day, believe it or not, in the 20s and early, it was a fixer-upper.
Chasing the poppy. Konnichiwa. I'm Israel Lopez Sensei of the Martial Maze.
Right now, you might be asking yourself, what is the martial maze? Well, I'm here to tell you. The Martial Maze is a martial arts podcast that deals with the complexities and pitfalls that one encounters when navigating the field of study that is martial arts. These discussions are from the points of view of actual martial artists, and we cover it all, with the occasional special guest, who of course are masters in their fields of study. From the president of the United States Judo Association to karate and kung fu royalty. Myself and Barakulat Shidoshi have over 40 plus years of martial experience. So please join us as we make our way through the martial maze. New episodes drop weekly, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
I
You know?
Where are we? We got time. We got time for another question.
One
Yeah, we
more.
got time
One
for
more.
one more.
Okay. So, how do you prepare for a tournament? Question. Other than the obvious drilling during your training and going over your game plan, does anyone else ever try? Does anyone else ever try to see who possibly may be in their bracket? And Facebook stalk them to see if they have any competition footage to see what their tendencies are and what their game looks like? Question mark.
Oh boy! All right, so for contests, the only thing I can tell you, the only thing that prepares you for tournament is tournaments. So go to as many as possible, because there's something that happens. I know a lot of folks, and I'm kind of going through this right now myself as I'm pulling off a lot of rust. And I say a lot of
Let's
rust,
talk
I'm
about that.
like-
Your tournament, you got a tournament coming up. You got the veterans.
Yeah, that's that'll be actually it's the end of the that'll be in Jesus. I was about to say-
November?
Yeah, November.
In Las Vegas.
Yeah, in Las Vegas, Nevada. But everything leading up to it is hitting all these different tournaments. It's World Veterans, and yeah, because the only thing that there's something that happens to you. Like you can train, you can go to the dojo, you can work over situations, you can do all those things, but being able to deal with the anxiety that kind of flares up. The pressure, you got a lot of people, crying, you're tuning out, you know what I'm saying? You got one shot to get it right, and no one trains that hard to go there to lose, you know what I'm saying? So that's like the guy who doesn't even place in the Olympics. And people say, well, at least he got there. Yeah, but that's not what he was training for. I'm like, think about all the things you sacrificed along the way.
Right.
So that's my first thing is, the only thing that's going to really prepare you is tournament. The other thing is, you will do whatever you've been doing for 6 months. That's what your body's going to default back to, no matter what. So you can watch the videos. You can watch it. Well, that guy faints, and you can try to think you're going to train for that, but you'll have to think about it. And there's a saying that if you have to think about it, it's not going to work. You're going to get hit. You know what I'm saying? The time it's going to take for you to that millisecond where the technique was there, where that opening was there, you just lost it because you had to think about it. So you're going to need certain things that are just there. So I would tell you, train. We always say play your judo or fight your way, you know what I'm saying? And then go to tournament. That's the only way I know how to explain that. It's like go to tournaments.
No, I
as many
find
as
it
you can.
I find it interesting because
see all the same
first
people.
and foremost, I don't, unless you're big time, you will have an idea of who you're competing against. All right,
Well-
because you're on a card lineup, but besides that, if you're going to a tournament, you don't know who's in your division.
That's another thing too. If you're playing, I can only speak to judo. In my weight class, even when I was fighting full time, all the same guys. You start to see almost all the same people, no matter where you went. All the hardcore competitors, to the point where you're like, hey, I once got a Shido, almost a Hansokamake, for asking the guy I was working, like we're in the middle of a fight.
Could you explain that for those who don't
Just
understand?
a Shido's a penalty. A Hansokamake is disqualification for conduct on becoming a judoka and all that other good stuff. Because I was talking about what bar we were going to go to afterwards during the match. It was one of them things. It was the only thing that was on my mind. It was a long day. So in my weight class, and even we always fought later in the day, so you had to be there really early, like for your weigh-in. You know what I'm saying? So it's like 8 a.m, but you weren't fighting until 5 p.m. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole tournament was pretty much done. So yeah, by then you're ready to go home. Especially if you had students competing too and stuff like that. So yeah, I got to root the kids on and all that other, but they're gone. And now we're waiting for us, the seniors, to come up to fight. And it's a long day. And all I was thinking about at the end of that day was what bar we were going to. Well, I had already knew I was medaling, so like it was just kind of like whether or not I was going to get the silver or the gold at this point. You know what I mean? So yeah, I was more concerned about what bar. It was horrible.
Oh boy, what about you, Haskins Sensei?
Well, when it comes to competition, I don't think anything should ever change. Like when I was coming up and I fought in tournaments that my instructors wanted me to. I wasn't a competition dude, but if they said, hey, we want you to fight in this, I'd go do it. And my instructor was always of the mindset. I have 4 instructors, and my instructors were always of the mindset, don't change things that you normally do. A lot of people will get into a tournament, start training up in this ritualized training routine for that tournament, looking on the internet. Back in the days when I was training, there was no internet. So if you didn't actually go to tournaments, you didn't know who you were fighting. You knew nothing about them. So just like in self-protection, we train against a blank slate.
Yes.
And it's more – my training personally is more about me dealing with common reactions and things as opposed to someone's personality and what they like to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I could care less who I'm fighting because things are common whether somebody's trained or not. For example, somebody's off balance and something's near them, what do? They try to grab in order to restabilize that thing. That's the premise behind, say, Aikijujutsu, you know? So somebody grabs you, and if they feel off balance, they grab tighter. It's hard for them to let go, which gives you joint locks and things like that, you know? So I go against the commonalities more opposed than the person's personality. So I could care less who I'm fighting. That's the way I approached it all the time, where a lot of people will delve deep, especially with this new wave internet thing, delve deep into watching footage of a person and trying to counter their likes.
Yeah, I feel like that's the only time you could actually get away with that is if you knew who you were fighting. Along like boxers, they watch tapes of people. But again, that's why most pro fighters take fights either twice a year or once a year, because a lot of times you have to retrain. Like if a guy's really weak, he does a feint, boom, before he throws that jab. When I need to train this, so I hire a guy to get in the ring that
And
does that
emulate
feint
that dude.
to emulate that dude,
Yep.
so I can practice, boom, knowing when to time that, when to time it, you know. And again, because I don't want my body to default back to what it was doing 6 months ago, I'm going to do that in a concentrated amount of time, retraining the body, retraining the body and the mind. I forgot what it's actually called. There's a whole scientific name for it, so that your body just does it without thinking about it.
And that's a major issue. And I tell my students, matter of fact, what's today? Today's Sunday. Friday, I was teaching the class, and I told my students, I said, listen, I train for the extreme. I train against blank slates, but I train for self-protection purposes. That way I can dumb it down for competition. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So it really doesn't – I don't train for competition and then have to try to amp it up for
well, that's what I was struggling with. We talked about this last episode, where that was the struggle, because I've always done judo as a martial art. Training for it for a sport changes my whole – like it's just weird. It's almost like a foreign concept to me. You know what I'm saying? To really be thinking about, well, if I'm being thrown, I need to get to the prone position where naturally, if I'm being thrown, I'm going to take that throw because I'm going to recover. I'll be in this – and I'm thinking more combatively. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, hell, not getting thrown, period. What do you mean I can't punch him in the back of his head? You know, it's like one of those kind of things. But with that being said, it's just like even and then, of course, getting re-familiar with the rules. Because, again, that's another thing. When you're going to tournament, you begin to learn how to play the rules. It's like the Matrix. You got to know where you can bend the rules, where you can sometimes break them. And, again, I know that if me and you play, I make a certain movement, and you get that, you come in for something and catch a Shido, now you're desperate because I'm winning, right? Because you're down by a Shido. You know what I'm saying? Or if I'm aggressive and I keep forcing you out of the ring, you're eventually going to get penalized for it. So it's going to force you to move around me, and because that's what I want. So even learning that, or learning what ref is going to allow for Newaza to play and what ref isn't. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like this. So it's a whole different game plan. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. So I'm going to train physically at the dojo, but the only thing that's going to get me ready for contest is going to contest and stuff. So that's the only answer I have right there. Does anybody else have anything else?
No.
All right. So with that, we are at time. We're going to thank our special guest, Haskins Sensei of the Underground
I'd like to have him more often.
Well, yeah, I mean, look. I do want to remind everybody about the Patreon. Like I said, there's an advertisement that came out during this episode. You might have heard the advertisement for it. You want to bounce on over. Right now, I think a guy by the name of Kyle Haranzi will be getting the Deadly Art of Survival package because I think we only have one Patreon. Yeah, we only have one member on the Patreon. So we're doing this big giveaway, and it's for a year. And everybody joins the Patreon, no matter what tier you are, you get entered into the drawing, and the drawings every month. And it's anything from our website, anything that's on our website. When I say anything, but I will tell you, if you're a martial artist, you definitely want to jump in on our Patreon. If you're not a martial artist, you just like the podcast, this, that, and the third, hey, we really appreciate your support. Love for you to support us. Yeah, there'll be some free merch for you, but it'd be more like Marshall Mays merch, that kind of thing. However, the quarterly award is the one you really want because we pay for a month at wherever you're training at.
Yes.
Yeah. Think about that. So if it's $120 a month at that dojo, we're paying that. The Marshall Mays is going, and it's just our way of saying thank you.
So is Kyle getting the quarterly? Because I charge $1,000 a month.
Well, on our website, you're going to see like the rules and stuff like that too. Because had somebody say that to me, well, if I join the Patreon this month and then cancel it next month, do I still get? And I was like, well, no, I think you have to be at least 2 months. Stuff like that. So, but with that being said, though, it's again our way of saying, thank you. But there'll be gis. There's going to be it's all martial arts equipment on our page. You'll start to see our page of the next week will be updated with a lot of gimmies and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, think about that. I think our cheapest gi retails at $120 and stuff like that. So you got to think about that. That's 120. Yeah, it's a nice Fuji gi.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that.
Nothing flimsy.
Yeah, no flimsy. So we're not selling trash. I mean, well, some of the weapons, and stuff like that. And again, there are per saleable things on the website. If we can't ship it to your state, we're sorry. We'll have to come up with something else to give you and stuff like that. So that was the other thing. So with that being said, with my partner in crime, Barakula Chidoshi.
With my partner here, Israel Lopez Sensei.
We'd like to thank our special guest, Haskins Sensei.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, yeah. I wasn't going to say the other part.
Yeah, I'll say it. UNA.
All right. With that being said, you've been listening to
The Marshall Mays.